The General Overseas Service of All India Radio presents readings from an autobiography or the story of my experiments with truth. The reading from the autobiography is presented by Sri Gopalkrishna Gandhi, writer, teacher, and the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. The words of the Mahatma in the voice of his grandson.
I hastened from the court, not knowing whether my client won or lost her case, but was ashamed of myself and decided not to take up any more cases until I had courage enough to conduct them. But there was another case in store for me at Bombay. It was a memorial to be drafted. A poor Musalman's land was confiscated in Porbandar. He approached me as the worthy son of a worthy father. His case appeared to be weak, but I consented to draft a memorial for him, the cost of printing to be borne by him. I drafted it and read it out to friends. They approved of it, and that to some extent made me feel confident that I was qualified enough to draft a memorial, as indeed I really was. I used to attend High Court daily whilst in Bombay, but I cannot say that I learnt anything there. I had not sufficient knowledge to learn much. Often I could not follow the cases and dozed off. There were also others who kept me company in this, and thus lightened my load of shame. After a time, I even lost the sense of shame as I learned to think that it was fashionable to doze in the court. In the meantime, a Memon firm from Porbandar wrote to my brother making the following offer. We have business in South Africa. Ours is a big firm, and we have a big case there in the court, our claim being £40,000. It has been going on for a long time. We have engaged the services of the best vakils and barristers. If you sent your brother there, he would be useful to us and also to himself. He would be able to instruct our counsel better than ourselves, and he would have the advantage of seeing a new part of the world and of making new acquaintances. My brother discussed the proposition with me. I could not clearly make out whether I had simply to instruct the counsel or to appear in court, but I was tempted. I closed with the offer without any haggling and got ready to go to South Africa. When starting for South Africa, I did not feel the wrench of separation which I had experienced when leaving for England. My mother was now no more. But this time, I only felt the pang of parting with my wife. Another baby had been born to us since my return from England. We are bound to meet again in a year, I said to her by way of consolation, and left Rajkot. The port of Natal is Durban, also known as Port Natal. Abdullah Sheikh was there to receive me. As the ship arrived at the quay, and I watched the people coming on board to meet their friends, I observed that the Indians were not held in much respect. I could not fail to notice a sort of snobbishness about the manner in which those who knew Abdullah Sheikh behaved towards him, and it stung me. Abdullah Sheikh was practically unlettered, but he had a rich fund of experience. He had an acute intellect and was conscious of it. The Indians held him in very high esteem. He was proud of Islam and loved to discourse on Islamic philosophy. On the second or third day of my arrival, he took me to see the Durban court. There he introduced me to several people and seated me next to his attorney. The magistrate kept staring at me and finally asked me to take off my turban. This I refused to do and left the court. So here too there was fighting in store for me. Abdullah Sheikh explained to me why some Indians were required to take off their turbans. Those wearing the Musalman costume might, he said, keep their turbans on, but the other Indians, on entering a court, had to take theirs off as a rule. The Indians were divided into different groups. One was that of Musalman merchants who would call themselves Arab. Another was that of Hindus, and yet another of Parsi clerks. But by far the largest class was that composed of Tamil, Telugu, and North Indian indentured and freed labourers. The indentured labourers were those who went to Natal on an agreement to serve for 5 years and came to be known there as Girmitiyas, from Girmit, which was the corrupt form of the English word agreement. The other three classes had none but business relations with this class. Englishmen called them Coolies, and as the majority of Indians belonged to the labouring class, all Indians were called Coolies or Samis. Sami is a Tamil suffix occurring after many Tamil names. I was hence known as a coolie barrister. The merchants were known as coolie merchants. The original meaning of the word coolie was thus forgotten, and it became a common appellation for all Indians. The Musalman merchant would resent this and say, I am not a coolie, I am an Arab, or I am a merchant, and the Englishman, if courteous, would apologize to him. The question of wearing the turban had a great importance in this state of things. Being obliged to take off one's Indian turban would be pocketing an insult. I wrote to the press about the incident and defended the wearing of my turban in the court. The question was very much discussed in the papers, which described me as an unwelcome visitor. Thus the incident gave me an unexpected advertisement in South Africa within a few days of my arrival there. My turban stayed with me practically until the end of my stay in South Africa. Whilst I was widening the circle of my acquaintance, the firm received a letter from their lawyer saying that preparations should be made for the case and that Abdullah Sheikh should go to Pretoria himself or send a representative. I told him that I was prepared to go to Pretoria. Where will you put up? Asked the Sheikh. Wherever you want me to, I said. Then I shall write to our lawyer. He will arrange for your lodgings there. I shall write to my Memon friends there, but I would not advise you to stay with them. The other party has great influence in Pretoria. Should any one of them manage to read your private correspondence, it might do us much harm. The more you avoid familiarity with them, the better. I shall stay wherever your lawyer puts me up, or I shall find out independent lodgings. But I do intend cultivating the acquaintance of the other party. I should like to be friends with them. I would try, if possible, to settle the case out of court. After all, Tayyab Seth is a relative of yours. Sheikh Tayyab Haji Khan Muhammad was a near relative of Abdullah Sheikh. The mention of a probable settlement somewhat startled the Sheikh, I could see. Don't be anxious about that, said I. I need not talk to Tayyab Seth or for that matter to anyone else about the case. I would only suggest to him to come to an understanding and so save a lot of unnecessary litigation. On the 7th or 8th day after my arrival, I left Durban. A first-class seat was booked for me.
You just heard the reading from the Autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, presented by Shri Gopalkrishna Gandhi, the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.